The eyes, the window of the soul. Have you ever noticed that the eyes can reveal everything the heart is trying to hide? Sometimes, even when a person says, "I'm fine," their eyes quietly whisper the truth, whether it's pain, exhaustion, or a quiet longing for comfort. The old saying goes, "The eyes are the window to the soul." And in Buddhism, this is more than just a poetic expression. The eyes are not only instruments to see the outer world, they are mirrors of our inner world. They reflect our emotions, our clarity, and even the state of our spirit. Think about it. When someone is joyful, their eyes shine with a light that feels contagious. When someone is angry, their gaze can feel sharp, heavy, almost piercing. And when a person carries deep compassion, their eyes soften. They make us feel safe, understood, and at peace. The Buddha once taught, if there is compassion in your eyes, the whole world becomes gentle. What a profound truth. Compassion doesn't have to be spoken aloud. It radiates quietly, invisibly, through our presence, through the way we look at others. The reflection of the mind in the eyes. Have you ever stood in front of a mirror and felt that your eyes look different depending on your mood? After a long day of stress, the eyes often appear tired, clouded, almost dim. But after moments of peace, like walking in nature, meditating, or laughing with someone you love, suddenly your eyes look brighter, more alive. Buddhism explains this very simply. When the mind is calm, the eyes naturally shine. When the mind is filled with anger, fear, or greed, the eyes become clouded, dull, and restless. It's like a lake. If the surface is calm, it reflects the sky clearly. But when the water is disturbed by wind and storms, the reflection is broken, distorted. Our eyes are like that lake. What we see in them is a reflection of the state of our inner being. A small story. I once met an elderly monk who radiated kindness without saying a single word. What struck me wasn't his voice or his gestures, but his eyes. They were gentle, steady, and shining, like the glow of a candle in a quiet room. When I asked him how he kept such brightness in his gaze, he simply smiled and said, "By keeping the heart light." When you let go of anger and keep compassion alive, the eyes naturally soften. You don't have to try. That conversation stayed with me. It made me realize, eyes don't lie. They carry the imprint of the soul. If we want our eyes to remain bright and kind, it's not about makeup, skincare, or tricks. It's about what we cultivate within. Looking at others with compassion. Let's pause and reflect. How do you usually look at people in your daily life? Do you glance quickly, distracted, not really present? Or do you sometimes look with judgment, measuring, comparing, criticizing in silence? What if, instead, we practiced looking at others with compassion? Imagine meeting a friend who is going through a hard time. Instead of asking too many questions or offering advice, you simply look at them with warmth, with the silent message, "I see you. You are safe here." That look alone can be more healing than 1,000 words. It's the kind of look parents give their children when they want to reassure them. It's the look of a friend who truly understands without you needing to explain. In that moment, the eyes become medicine. Why this matters? Our world today is overflowing with noise, words, screens, messages, endless information. But amidst all of this, what truly reaches the heart is not always words, but presence. And presence is felt most deeply through the eyes. Have you ever been in a crowded room but felt a sudden connection when someone looked at you with genuine kindness? That moment cuts through the chaos, reminding you that you are seen, that you matter. This is why the Buddha emphasized compassion in every aspect of life, even in something as subtle as the way we look at others. A compassionate gaze doesn't just change how others feel, it also transforms us. Because every time we look with kindness, we are training our own heart to be softer, lighter, and more open. A reflection for you. Tonight, before you go to bed, try standing in front of the mirror. Look into your own eyes, not with judgment, not to criticize the wrinkles or the tiredness, but with compassion. Whisper to yourself, "You've done your best today. You are worthy of kindness." Notice how your eyes change, even slightly. That softness you give yourself is the beginning of a new way of looking at the world. Because when we can be kind to ourselves, our eyes naturally carry that kindness outward. Closing thought. So, yes, the eyes truly are the window of the soul. They reveal whether we carry storms inside, or a calm, gentle lake. They show whether we live in anger or in compassion. And as the Buddha reminded us, when compassion is in the eyes, the world becomes gentle. The question for us is, how can we nurture compassion in our gaze, day by day? How do we practice so that every look we give becomes a gift, a blessing to those around us? That is the journey we will begin to explore together. And in the next video, we'll dive deeper into how to cultivate compassion, not as an idea, but as a living energy shining through our very eyes. So stay with me, because once your eyes carry compassion, not only does the world look brighter, you also become a source of light for everyone you meet. Keeping the mind pure, the eyes naturally shine. Have you ever looked at yourself in the mirror after a long, exhausting day and felt that your eyes looked heavier, dimmer, almost burdened? It's strange, isn't it? The face may carry a smile, but the eyes reveal the truth. They show stress, worry, and fatigue that makeup cannot hide. Buddhism teaches us something very profound. The brightness of our eyes doesn't come from the outside, but from within. The eyes are not just physical organs, they are mirrors of the mind. When the mind is clear and calm, the eyes shine with natural radiance. When the mind is clouded by anger, greed, or restlessness, the eyes lose their light, just like a lamp covered in dust. The mirror of the soul. Let's pause for a moment. Think of a time when you felt at peace, maybe while walking by the ocean, sitting quietly under a tree, or simply enjoying a warm cup of tea in silence. Do you remember how your eyes felt? They were not just relaxed, they carried a softness, a glow. Now, think of a moment when you were stressed, rushing from one task to another, or caught in conflict. Didn't your eyes feel sharper, more tense, even dry and tired? This is the law of the heart reflected in the eyes. The Buddha explained it simply. When the mind is pure, the eyes become gentle and luminous. When the mind is disturbed, the eyes grow heavy and dark. It's like a lake. If the water is muddy, no matter how bright the sun shines, the reflection will be unclear. But if the lake is clear, still, and pure, it naturally mirrors the light of the sky. Our eyes are just like that lake. A story from daily life. I once had a teacher who seemed to always carry a sparkle in his gaze. Even when life around him was chaotic, even when others were frustrated or upset, his eyes remained calm, warm, and steady. Curious, I asked him one day, "How do you keep such clarity in your eyes?" He smiled gently and said, "By cleaning my mind each day, the same way you clean your body. Just as dirt collects on the skin, negative emotions collect in the mind. If you don't wash them off, they cloud the heart and dim the eyes." That answer struck me deeply, because it reminded me that inner purity is not a one-time effort, but a daily practice. We wash our faces each morning, but how often do we wash our hearts? The three poisons. Buddhism often speaks of the three poisons that cloud the heart: greed, anger, and ignorance. When greed arises, the eyes grow restless, searching, never satisfied. When anger takes over, the eyes become sharp, burning, sometimes even frightening. When ignorance clouds the mind, the eyes lose clarity, becoming dull, as if the light has gone out. But when we let go of greed, soften anger, and open to wisdom, something magical happens. The eyes brighten. They don't just look brighter, they feel brighter, and others notice it too. A reflection for you. Think about this. Have you ever met someone whose eyes felt like home? They didn't have to be beautiful in the conventional sense. Maybe they were older, wrinkled, even tired, but their gaze was kind, clean, and full of life. That's the light of a pure heart shining through. Now contrast that with someone who has all the physical beauty the world praises, but whose eyes feel cold, calculating, or empty. You can sense the difference immediately. That's because true brightness of the eyes cannot be faked. It is born from within. The challenge of keeping the mind pure. But here's the truth. Keeping the mind pure is not easy. We live in a world that constantly pulls us into noise and distraction. We are bombarded with information, tempted by desires, provoked by conflicts. It's like trying to keep a glass of water clear in the middle of a dust storm. So the real question is not whether the mind gets clouded, but how we return to clarity again and again. A simple practice. Here's a practice you might try. At the end of the day, before bed, sit quietly and close your eyes. Breathe gently. With each breath out, imagine releasing a bit of the stress, the anger, or the worry you carried. With each breath in, imagine drawing in calm, light, and kindness. Then, when you open your eyes again, look at yourself in the mirror. Notice how even a few minutes of mindful breathing softens your gaze. This is not magic. It's simply the natural reflection of a quieter mind. Why it matters. We often spend so much time trying to look radiant on the outside: skincare, clothes, makeup, accessories. But the deepest kind of radiance doesn't come from those things. It comes from the purity of the heart reflected in the eyes. Because in the end, people don't remember the brand of shirt you wore or the color of your lipstick. They remember how your presence made them feel. And the first place they look is your eyes. A closing thought. So yes, it is true. When the mind is pure, the eyes naturally shine. It's not about trying harder to appear kind or peaceful. It's about actually being kind and peaceful within. When we cleanse our hearts each day, by letting go of anger, releasing greed, and choosing compassion, our eyes become gentle mirrors of that inner beauty. The Buddha taught us that a pure heart makes the whole world brighter. And through the eyes, that brightness touches everyone we meet. But how do we actually keep the mind pure in the middle of daily struggles? What practices can we hold on to when life feels overwhelming? That's what we'll explore in the next video. A simple yet powerful secret to keeping your inner light alive. So stay with me. Because once your mind is clear, your eyes don't just shine for yourself, they become a light for the whole world. The eyes of a smile. Have you ever noticed how a genuine smile can completely change the way your eyes look? It's almost magical. In an instant, the gaze softens, the corners of the eyes curve upward, and suddenly, there's a glow that wasn't there a moment before. A smile doesn't just live on the lips, it lives in the eyes. And here's the beauty of it. The most powerful smiles are never forced. They're not the polite smiles we wear in front of strangers, or the half-hearted ones we give to hide discomfort. The smiles that truly transform the eyes are the ones born from understanding, acceptance, and letting go. The Buddhist view of a smile. In Buddhism, a smile is not just an expression, it's a reflection of inner freedom. The Buddha himself was often depicted with a gentle smile, not because life was free of suffering, but because he saw through suffering with wisdom. Think of it this way: when we cling too tightly to our worries, our eyes narrow, our faces tighten, and joy feels far away. But when we release, even just a little, the burden lifts, and a smile naturally arises. That smile flows upward into the eyes, lighting them with warmth. It's like the difference between sunlight struggling to break through storm clouds versus sunlight shining on a clear day. One is blocked and heavy, the other radiates freely. The science of smiling. Interestingly, even modern science supports this. Psychologists have found that a genuine smile, the kind known as a Duchenne smile, involves not just the mouth but the small muscles around the eyes. That's why we often say, you can see it in their eyes. A forced smile might curve the lips, but the eyes stay flat, lifeless. A true smile, however, activates the eyes, creating a sparkle, a warmth that others can feel. This is why a genuine smile can change not only how we feel, but how others experience us. A story about presence. I remember once visiting a meditation retreat, where silence was kept throughout the day. No one was speaking, no one was sharing words, but every so often, people would pass each other on the path and exchange a smile. There was one elderly nun in particular who stood out. She didn't talk, she didn't do anything extraordinary, but her eyes carried the kind of smile that went straight to the heart. It was as though her whole being was smiling, even when her lips were not. That moment taught me something important. The smile of the eyes is not dependent on circumstances. It doesn't come from perfect conditions, but from an inner space of peace. A question for you. When was the last time you smiled? Not because you had to, but because you felt free. Maybe it was when you finally let go of something that had been weighing you down. Maybe it was when you witnessed a small act of kindness. Or maybe it was just a quiet moment when you realized you didn't need to fight the world anymore. Do you remember how your eyes felt in that moment? That's the power of a genuine smile. Smiling through wisdom. The Buddha often reminded us, suffering is a natural part of life. But he also taught that freedom comes when we understand suffering, rather than running from it. And from that understanding comes a smile, not of denial, but of acceptance. This kind of smile carries no bitterness. It doesn't mean everything is perfect. It simply means, I see life as it is, and I choose to meet it with peace. When we smile from that place, our eyes naturally shine. They no longer carry the sharpness of tension or the heaviness of worry. Instead, they radiate warmth, the kind of warmth that makes others feel safe, welcome, and at ease. Why the eyes matter in smiling. Here's something interesting. People often don't remember your exact words, but they remember how your presence made them feel. And the quickest way that presence is communicated is through the eyes. Imagine two people smiling at you. One smile feels empty, disconnected. It doesn't reach the eyes. The other smile, even if small, carries genuine care, and you can feel it in the gaze. Which one stays with you longer? This is why nurturing the smile of the eyes is so powerful. It's not about pretending to be happy. It's about cultivating peace and compassion so deeply that it naturally shows up in your gaze. A practice you can try. Here's a simple practice. The next time you meditate, or even when you're just sitting quietly, try to bring a gentle smile to your lips. Not forced, not exaggerated, just a small, natural smile. Let it spread slowly, not just across your face but into your heart. Then, notice how it affects your eyes. Notice the softness that appears, the lightness in your gaze. This is not about putting on a smile. It's about inviting the body and mind to relax, so the eyes reflect inner ease. Over time, this practice becomes second nature. You begin to carry a smile not only on your lips, but in your eyes, even when you're silent, even when you're still. A reflection on daily life. Think about the people you encounter each day, your family, your coworkers, even strangers at the grocery store. How different would your interactions feel if your eyes carried a smile, a sense of warmth and openness? Sometimes, we underestimate the impact of something so small, but a single genuine smile, shared through the eyes, can change someone's day. It might give them hope, comfort, or simply a reminder that kindness still exists. And here's the beautiful paradox. The more we share that smile, the more it deepens in us. It's not something we lose, it's something that multiplies. Closing thought. So yes, it's true. A genuine smile can transform your eyes instantly. Not because you force it, but because it arises from understanding and letting go. When the smile is real, the eyes curve gently, shining with light that no makeup or trick can replicate. Those who carry wisdom often don't need to say much. A simple smile from their eyes can communicate warmth, compassion, and peace. The question for us is, how can we make that smile a natural part of our daily life? How can we carry it, not just in moments of joy, but even in moments of challenge? That's what we'll explore in the next video. The secret to allowing the smile to always be present, not as a mask, but as a reflection of true inner freedom. So stay with me, because once your eyes learn to smile, you don't just brighten your own world, you brighten everyone else's too. Letting go of anger to keep gentle eyes. Hook. Have you ever noticed how your eyes change when anger takes over? Main content. It's almost unsettling. When anger rises, the warmth in our eyes disappears. They become sharp, heavy, and even frightening to others. It's as if a storm cloud suddenly covers a clear sky. The eyes, which usually reflect kindness and light, now radiate fire, suspicion, and hostility. Think back to the last time you were truly upset. Did you feel how your gaze alone carried the weight of your emotions? In Buddhism, the eyes are not just physical organs for sight. They are mirrors of the heart. The Buddha once said, "Anger burns merit like a wildfire." It doesn't just consume our peace, it also scorches the good seeds we've patiently planted within ourselves. And you can see that burning in the eyes of an angry person. The spark that could illuminate life instead becomes a flame that destroys harmony. So the question is, how do we protect our eyes from becoming weapons of fire, and instead let them stay as gentle lanterns of compassion? The answer lies in learning to transform anger, not suppress it. Suppression only pushes anger deeper into the subconscious, where it grows even stronger. Transformation, however, means facing it directly, breathing with it, and allowing compassion to cool its flames. Let me share something simple yet profound: the breath. When anger arises, if you immediately anchor yourself in a few deep breaths, you give space between the fire and your reaction. Imagine breathing in like filling a jar with cool water, and breathing out as if pouring that water over burning coals. With every cycle of breath, the fire loses its intensity. But the breath alone is not always enough. This is where compassion comes in, the ability to see beyond your own pain and recognize the suffering in the other person. Have you noticed how difficult it is to stay angry when you suddenly realize the one who hurt you is themselves hurting deeply? Compassion doesn't excuse harmful actions, but it softens the way we hold them in our hearts. And when compassion rises, your eyes naturally change. They no longer glare with accusation. Instead, they begin to reflect understanding, a silent message that says, "I see your pain, and I don't want to add more fire to it." There's an old story in the Buddhist tradition. A monk once asked his teacher how to deal with people who constantly provoke anger. The teacher replied, "When you meet anger with anger, both eyes turn blind. But when you meet anger with compassion, one eye begins to see clearly, and the other teaches the world how to heal." It's a poetic way of reminding us that our gaze can either deepen the darkness or bring light. Let's pause for a moment and reflect. What kind of gaze do you want to offer to the world? Do you want people to feel safe, seen, and respected in your presence? Or do you want them to flinch under the heat of your resentment? Every interaction, no matter how small, plants a seed. A single harsh look can leave a scar, but a gentle, understanding look can save someone from drowning in despair. I've experienced this myself. There was a time when stress and frustration made my eyes feel heavy and sharp almost every day. People around me, friends, colleagues, even strangers, would sometimes avoid my gaze. Not because I said anything cruel, but because my eyes betrayed my inner storm. The day I learned to pause, breathe, and soften my heart before meeting someone's eyes, everything changed. Suddenly, people lingered longer in conversation. They felt safe. Some even opened up about things they had never told anyone. That's the quiet power of gentle eyes. And yet, here's a question many of us secretly wonder. If I let go of anger, if I keep my eyes soft and kind, will people take advantage of me? Will I become weak in a world that often rewards hardness? It's a fair concern, and it leads us straight to the heart of the next reflection. Because the truth is, gentleness is not weakness. It is a strength so rare that most people mistake it for fragility. But as we'll explore in the next part, letting go of anger does not mean surrendering your power. Instead, it's about wielding a different kind of power, the kind that builds trust, heals wounds, and transforms conflicts into understanding. Closing message. So remember this: when anger clouds your vision, your eyes lose their light. But when you breathe, when you let compassion rise, your gaze becomes a place of refuge for others. Gentle eyes are not a sign of weakness, they are a sign of true mastery. But this brings us to the deeper question. If we don't use anger as our shield, how do we protect ourselves? If we release the fire, do we risk losing our strength? The answer may surprise you, and we'll uncover it in the next part. The eyes that know how to listen. Hook. Have you ever felt truly loved? Not because of words, not even because of a touch, but simply because of the way someone looked at you, with listening eyes? Main content. We often think of listening as something we do with our ears. But have you noticed that real listening is also carried through the eyes? When someone looks at you with eyes that are present, soft, and open, you feel understood even before a single word is spoken. Think of a time you poured your heart out to someone. Maybe you were going through heartbreak, or a period of stress that left you feeling fragile. Now, imagine two different responses. In one case, the person stares at you impatiently, their eyes wandering to their phone or darting around the room. In the other case, they look at you with steady, gentle attention. Their eyes don't interrupt. They don't judge. They simply hold space for you. Which one makes you feel safe enough to share your truth? In Buddhism, this quality of presence is considered an act of compassion. To listen with the eyes means to offer another human being a mirror of acceptance. No accusations. No corrections. Just the silent message, I see you, and I'm here with you. Sometimes, that is all a person needs in order to breathe easier. You can even test this in your own life. The next time someone speaks to you, whether it's your partner, your child, a friend, or even a stranger, try to soften your gaze. Imagine your eyes becoming like a calm lake, reflecting their words without ripples of judgment. You don't need to come up with the perfect response. Often, it's not advice people crave, it's understanding. And your eyes can give them that. I once had an experience with a close friend who was grieving a great loss. She told me later, "What helped me most wasn't what you said. It was how you looked at me. It felt like your eyes told me it was okay to cry." I realized then that sometimes, compassion doesn't need language, it just needs presence. This doesn't mean our eyes should become blank or emotionless. Quite the opposite. Listening eyes are full of life. They carry tenderness, patience, and curiosity. They say, your story matters. And when someone feels that message, their pain softens, even if only a little. The Buddha often emphasized the importance of non-judgmental awareness. He taught that suffering lessens when we feel truly seen. And what is more powerful than a gaze that communicates, I will not turn away from your suffering? It's almost as if the eyes can carry a silent prayer for the other person. But let's pause for a moment and reflect. Why is it so rare to encounter eyes that truly listen? Perhaps it's because most of us are caught in our own storms. Our eyes are clouded by worry, distraction, or subtle judgment. We are often more focused on what we want to say next rather than on simply being present. And yet, imagine how the world would feel if more of us could carry eyes that listen. Families would argue less and connect more deeply. Friendships would grow roots instead of withering from neglect. Even strangers would sense more warmth and less hostility in passing encounters. Listening eyes have a healing quality because they don't demand anything in return. They don't rush. They don't measure your words. They simply welcome you as you are. And in a society where so many feel unseen or unheard, such eyes are priceless. Here's a gentle challenge for you. Today, when someone speaks to you, resist the urge to fix or respond immediately. Instead, give them your full attention through your gaze. Let your eyes say, "You are safe here." Notice how that changes not just them, but also you. You'll feel calmer, more patient, and more connected. Closing message. So the question is, what do we need within ourselves to cultivate eyes that truly listen? Because listening through the eyes is not just about technique, it's about the quality of our heart. And that is exactly what we'll explore in the next part. Eyes free from attachment. Hook. Do you believe that even the eyes can reveal attachment? That a gaze filled with craving leaves its own kind of trace? Main content. When we look at the world, our eyes do more than see. They also expose what our heart is clinging to. If you've ever noticed someone looking at an object of desire, you've probably seen it. The eyes tighten, they narrow, sometimes they almost glitter with hunger. It might be toward beauty, success, or possessions. And strangely, that look, instead of appearing radiant, often seems restless, uneasy, even heavy. The Buddha taught that attachment, whether to beauty, fame, or wealth, always leaves a mark. It doesn't just burden the mind, it shows in the body, and most vividly, in the eyes. Think of a person so obsessed with appearances that every glance they give others is full of judgment and comparison. Or imagine someone endlessly chasing success. Their eyes rarely rest, always scanning, always reaching. Have you ever sensed the tension in such a gaze? It doesn't invite peace, it projects anxiety. On the other hand, picture someone who is free from that constant grasping. Their gaze feels lighter, almost transparent. There's nothing sticky in it, nothing demanding. You can meet their eyes without feeling measured or consumed. Instead, you feel space. And in that space, your own heart relaxes. Why is this? Because non-attachment softens the eyes. When we let go of clinging, our gaze stops trying to own or control. It simply rests. It becomes like the sky, vast, open, and clear. The Buddha often pointed us back to the truth of impermanence. Everything we crave, beauty, wealth, recognition, changes. Faces wrinkle. Status fades. Even the things we once clutched tightly eventually slip away. To remember impermanence is not to deny life's beauty, but to see it more truthfully. Just as we can admire a flower more deeply when we know it will wither tomorrow, so too can we appreciate the people and moments in our lives without chaining them to expectation. Imagine looking at a loved one with this awareness. Instead of clinging, your eyes soften with gratitude. You no longer demand that they stay the same forever. You simply cherish the present. That gaze carries both tenderness and freedom. It says, "I love you, and I do not need to possess you." I once met a teacher who embodied this. Whenever he looked at people, his eyes seemed both warm and unbound. You felt cared for, but not captured. His gaze gave, without taking. And I realized, that's the kind of look that can only come from a heart trained in letting go. But here's the challenge. How do we actually cultivate eyes free from attachment in daily life? After all, the world constantly tempts us. Advertisements promising happiness, social media feeding comparison, ambition whispering that we are never enough. One way is through small practices of impermanence. For example, when you drink a cup of tea, remind yourself, this taste will not last. Instead of clinging, you savor it more fully. Or when you see someone attractive, instead of getting lost in desire, reflect, this body too will age. Not to reject them, but to free yourself from grasping. Little by little, this shifts the quality of your gaze. Another practice is gratitude. When you focus on appreciating rather than possessing, your eyes reflect contentment. Gratitude turns the gaze into something generous instead of greedy. Think about your own life. How often do your eyes reveal craving, wanting something or someone to complete you? And how would it feel if your eyes could instead reflect freedom, offering presence without need? Eyes free from attachment are beautiful, not because they sparkle with desire, but because they shine with peace. They don't pull you in like a trap, they invite you to rest, as if saying, "You are enough, and so am I." Closing message. So the real question is, how do we practice seeing impermanence in the ordinary flow of life, not just as an idea, but as a living awareness? That is what we will explore together in the next part. The eyes of compassion. Hook. Have you ever felt seen by someone, not with judgment, not with expectation, but with a gaze so full of love and kindness that it asked nothing of you? Main content. Compassion is often spoken about as something we express through words or actions. But sometimes, compassion begins silently, through the eyes. A compassionate gaze doesn't demand. It doesn't push. It simply offers comfort, as if to say, "You are safe here. You are worthy of care." Think of the last time you felt deeply comforted. Was it because of what someone said? Or was it because of the way they looked at you, with warmth, patience, and acceptance? The truth is, our eyes often speak louder than our words. The Buddha once taught that a compassionate gaze is one of the greatest gifts you can offer another person. Imagine that for a moment. Not money, not possessions, not clever advice, but simply the way you look at someone can become a healing gift. Isn't that remarkable? Let's test this idea. Picture yourself walking into a room where people are stressed and hurried. Eyes are sharp, tired, restless. How do you feel? Probably tense, maybe even unwelcome. Now, imagine walking into another room where someone greets you with eyes that radiate kindness. They don't need to smile broadly or say anything profound. Their eyes alone tell you, "I see you, and I wish you well." Immediately, you breathe easier. That is the power of compassion carried through the gaze. And compassion is not weakness. In fact, it is one of the strongest forces we can cultivate. A compassionate gaze doesn't mean ignoring harm or pretending that everything is fine. Rather, it means seeing the pain, the imperfection, the humanity in others, and choosing not to add more judgment, but instead to add gentleness. I remember once being in a heated conversation with someone I loved. My instinct was to defend myself, to argue. But then I noticed her eyes. They weren't harsh. They were full of sadness and care. That look disarmed me. It reminded me that beneath our words, what we both really wanted was understanding. Compassion, expressed through her eyes, shifted the whole energy of that moment. This is why Buddhist practice emphasizes training the heart as much as the mind. When the heart is softened by compassion, the eyes naturally follow. You can't fake it for long. If you carry anger, resentment, or indifference inside, it will eventually show. But when you genuinely wish well for others, your eyes reveal it instantly. And here's a beautiful truth. Compassion doesn't just heal the person who receives it. It also heals the one who offers it. Studies in psychology have shown that practicing compassion reduces stress and even improves health. But long before science confirmed it, the Buddha knew, when you look at the world with compassion, you suffer less. Your gaze lightens, your heart feels freer, and your relationships deepen. Let's bring this into your daily life. The next time you're at the grocery store, instead of looking past the cashier as just another transaction, pause. Look into their eyes with kindness. Silently wish them well. Notice how that softens not just your gaze, but your whole presence. These small acts accumulate, and little by little, you become someone whose very eyes are a refuge for others. But here's the question. Is compassion something we are simply born with, or can it be cultivated? Many people think it's just a trait some lucky individuals have. But in Buddhist practice, compassion is seen as a muscle, something we can all strengthen with intention and practice. Closing message. So, can compassion be learned, nurtured, and deepened in our everyday lives? That is exactly what we will explore together in the next part. The eyes of wisdom. Hook. Have you ever met someone whose eyes were both gentle and sharp at the same time? An eye that seems to see right through you, not to judge, but to understand. That, my friends, is what I call the eyes of wisdom. Main content. When we talk about wisdom, especially in the Buddha sense, it's not about book knowledge or clever arguments. Wisdom is not the same as intelligence. You can be very smart, solve complex problems, and still be blind when it comes to understanding yourself or the people around you. But wisdom, the kind the Buddha spoke of, is about truly seeing things as they are. Imagine walking into a dark room. At first, everything feels confusing. You stumble, you bump into furniture, you don't know where anything is. That's how life feels without wisdom, full of confusion, frustration, and mistakes. But then, someone lights a lamp. Suddenly, the room is the same, but you can see. You know where to walk, you avoid obstacles, and you feel more at ease. That light is wisdom. It doesn't change the furniture, it changes how you see it. The Buddha often taught that suffering comes from misunderstanding reality. We cling to things that are impermanent, hoping they will last. We run away from discomfort, hoping to avoid pain forever. But wisdom allows us to recognize impermanence, to see that joy and sorrow, gain and loss, health and sickness, they all come and go. When you really see this truth, your eyes change. They no longer look out with desperation or fear. Instead, they look out with clarity, acceptance, and even kindness. Think about the people in your life. Have you noticed how some eyes are restless, darting, always scanning for something to want, something to fear? And then there are others whose eyes carry a calm brightness, as if they've made peace with life's ups and downs. That's the difference between eyes clouded by ignorance and eyes lit up by wisdom. Wisdom doesn't make your eyes cold or detached. Quite the opposite. The Buddha described wisdom and compassion as two wings of the same bird. One cannot fly without the other. When wisdom shines through your gaze, it doesn't just see suffering, it understands it, and in that understanding, compassion naturally flows. That's why the eyes of wisdom are not harsh or intimidating, but gentle, patient, and deeply reassuring. They see clearly, but they also forgive easily. Let me share a story. There was once a monk who lived simply in the forest. One day, a thief broke into his hut, searching for valuables. The monk calmly watched and said, "You won't find much here, but if you need clothes, take this robe." The thief was startled. He had expected anger or fear. Instead, he met an unshakable calm, an eye that saw not just a thief, but a man driven by suffering. The story goes that the thief eventually left in tears, touched by the monk's wisdom and compassion. What changed him wasn't a lecture or a punishment. It was the gaze of someone who saw through his actions into his humanity. That is the power of wisdom in the eyes. Now, you might be wondering, how can we cultivate such eyes ourselves? It begins with mindfulness. When you are mindful, you start noticing how often your eyes are clouded by craving, jealousy, or judgment. With awareness, you learn to pause and ask, am I seeing clearly, or am I seeing through the lens of desire and fear? Next comes contemplation. The Buddha often encouraged his disciples to reflect on impermanence, suffering, and non-self, not as abstract concepts, but as daily observations. When you see your child growing up, when you watch a flower bloom and wither, when you notice your own body aging, these are invitations to open your eyes to reality. Over time, this contemplation softens the panic of loss and sharpens your appreciation for the present. And then there's compassion practice. The more you open your heart to others, the clearer your vision becomes. It may sound paradoxical, but compassion is not a distraction from wisdom, it deepens it. When you look into the eyes of someone who is struggling, and you choose to see not just their flaws but their humanity, your eyes begin to mirror that balance of clarity and kindness. Wisdom also means seeing beyond appearances. The Buddha taught that we often mistake the surface for the truth. A smile may hide sorrow. Anger may be a mask for fear. Success may conceal emptiness. The eyes of wisdom learn to see beyond these masks, to perceive the currents beneath the surface. Imagine how much gentler our relationships would be if we could look at each other with this kind of understanding. Let me pose a question to you. What do you think people see when they look into your eyes? Do they see someone rushing, craving, fearing? Or do they see someone steady, present, and kind? Our eyes are like mirrors. They reveal more than we realize. And the more wisdom we cultivate, the more those who meet our gaze feel comforted and understood. For me, one of the most moving experiences was sitting with an elderly teacher whose eyes seemed to carry decades of meditation and deep insight. He didn't need to say much. Just a glance was enough to make you feel both seen and accepted, without judgment. It made me realize that wisdom isn't something abstract. It can live in our very gaze, shaping how others feel in our presence. Closing message. So, the eyes of wisdom are not only about knowledge. They are about seeing reality clearly, embracing impermanence, and holding others with compassion. They are sharp in clarity, yet soft in kindness. But here's the real question. Wisdom doesn't appear overnight. It has to be nurtured. And that brings us to the next step. How do we actually train our eyes and our hearts to embody this kind of wisdom in everyday life? That's what we'll explore in the next part. Eyes nurtured by meditation. Hook. Did you know that just by sitting still, your eyes can become clearer, calmer, and even kinder? It may sound simple, almost too simple, but meditation has a way of softening the gaze and illuminating the eyes from within. Main content. When people think about meditation, they often imagine someone sitting cross-legged with eyes closed, far removed from the world. But meditation is not about escaping life. It's about learning to be fully present with life, moment by moment, breath by breath. And when the mind settles into that presence, the eyes begin to reflect it. Have you ever noticed the difference between eyes filled with stress and eyes touched by calm? Stressful eyes dart around, restless, almost hungry. But a person who meditates regularly often carries a different gaze. Steady, soft, luminous. It's not something they put on, like makeup. It's something that naturally emerges when the storm inside the mind quiets down. The Buddha once compared the mind to a lake. When the waters are agitated by wind, you can't see clearly into the depths. But when the winds die down, the lake becomes still, and you can see straight to the bottom. Meditation is that process of calming the winds. And when the lake of your mind becomes still, your eyes reflect that clarity. Think of those rare moments in your own life when you felt truly peaceful. Maybe watching a sunset, maybe sitting quietly in nature, or maybe after a deep breath when the chaos of the day finally softened. Do you remember how your eyes felt? Softer, less heavy, almost glowing? That is the natural radiance of a mind at ease. Meditation helps us return to that state, not just once in a while, but as a way of being. In Buddhist practice, meditation isn't just about relaxation. It's about training the mind to rest, to stay steady amidst the turbulence of thoughts and emotions. As you sit and breathe, thoughts may come and go, but you learn not to chase them. This letting go makes the eyes stop chasing too. Instead of scanning the world for the next desire or the next danger, the eyes rest, gentle and open. Some people say, "I don't have time to meditate." But here's a thought. How much time do we spend scrolling endlessly on our phones, letting our eyes jump from image to image, headline to headline? That restless gaze exhausts not only the eyes but the heart as well. What if, instead, we gave our eyes just 5 minutes of stillness every day? Imagine sitting quietly, letting the gaze soften, not staring, not searching, but simply resting. Over time, those 5 minutes could transform not just your vision, but the way others feel when they meet your eyes. I once met an elderly nun who had spent decades in meditation. What struck me most wasn't her words, but her eyes. They were bright, almost childlike, yet profoundly calm. When she looked at you, it felt like the world slowed down. You didn't feel judged, you didn't feel rushed, you felt at peace. Her eyes carried the weight of stillness, the kind of stillness that only years of sitting quietly could cultivate. That encounter made me realize that meditation leaves a mark, not just on the mind, but on the very gaze we carry into the world. Science is beginning to confirm this as well. Studies show that meditation reduces stress, lowers anxiety, and even changes the brain structure in ways that enhance clarity and emotional balance. If the brain transforms, why wouldn't the eyes reflect that transformation too? They are, after all, the window of the soul. But meditation isn't about perfection. Even a few minutes a day can soften the eyes. Try this. The next time you sit quietly, gently rest your gaze, not straining, not focusing sharply, but letting the eyes relax as if they were floating. Notice how, after a few breaths, your vision feels less tense. That simple shift is meditation at work, nurturing your eyes in ways you might not expect. Let me ask you, what would it be like if people looked into your eyes and immediately felt calmer? How would that change your relationships, your conversations, even your daily interactions at work or at home? This is the quiet power of eyes nurtured by meditation. They don't just transform you, they transform the space around you. And remember, meditation is not about withdrawing from life. It's about meeting life more fully. A meditator doesn't walk around with closed eyes. They walk around with open eyes, but eyes that see with clarity and kindness, rather than with fear or craving. The more we sit in stillness, the more we can carry that stillness into the way we look at the world, the way we see others, and even the way we see ourselves. In many traditions, people say the eyes never lie. They reveal whether you're anxious, whether you're angry, whether you're at peace. Meditation teaches us to bring honesty, openness, and calm into that gaze. So when someone meets your eyes, they don't just see you, they feel the quality of your inner life. That is why eyes nurtured by meditation shine differently. They are not dimmed by distraction or dulled by constant wanting. They are awake, but they are also kind. Closing message. So yes, just by sitting quietly, by letting the storm of the mind calm down, your eyes can become clearer, softer, and brighter. Meditation nurtures not only your heart but also the very way your gaze touches the world. But here's the thing, meditation is not the only path. There are other ways to keep the eyes bright and gentle, even outside of sitting practice. What are those ways? That is what we will explore in our final part of this series. The eyes of freedom. Hook. Imagine looking into the eyes of someone who no longer carries fear, who no longer clings to anything. What would you see? Main content. Most of us go through life with eyes that carry weight of worry, of wanting, of unresolved anger, of old memories we can't quite let go of. You can see it in the way the gaze sometimes tightens, in the way it flickers with anxiety or dulls with exhaustion. But then there are those rare individuals whose eyes look entirely different. Their eyes are open, calm, bright. There is no storm behind them, no restlessness driving them. Those are the eyes of freedom. In Buddhist teaching, true freedom is not about escaping responsibility or living without limits. It is about being free from the chains that we ourselves create, desire that never ends, anger that consumes, ignorance that blinds. These are called the three poisons: greed, hatred, and delusion. When a person is still caught in them, their eyes often betray it. But when someone is liberated from them, the eyes tell a new story, one of spaciousness, of kindness, of unshakable peace. Think of the Buddha. The scriptures describe him as having eyes that radiated serenity, eyes in which people found comfort without a single word being spoken. They were called eyes of compassion, but also eyes of wisdom. They were not sharp with judgment, nor clouded by attachment. Instead, they reflected a heart that had let go, a mind that was utterly free. Have you ever met someone whose gaze gave you a sense of safety? Perhaps it was a teacher, a grandparent, or even a stranger on a quiet afternoon. Just one look, and suddenly you felt lighter, as if you didn't need to prove anything, as if you were accepted exactly as you were. That is a glimpse of what the eyes of freedom can offer. They are like windows that don't trap you, they open you. But freedom is not about indifference. It doesn't mean a person turns cold or detached. Quite the opposite. The eyes of freedom are warm, gentle, and attentive, but they do not cling. They love without trying to possess. They see clearly without the need to control. In that freedom, there is room for others to breathe, to be, to grow. Let's pause for a moment. Imagine if your own eyes carried that freedom into every interaction. What would happen if, instead of meeting others with expectation or judgment, you met them with openness? Wouldn't your relationships feel lighter? Wouldn't your daily life feel less like a battle and more like a flow? I remember once meeting a meditation teacher who embodied this. His eyes were not extraordinary in color or shape, but when he looked at you, you felt as though he had nothing to take from you, nothing to demand, nothing to prove. And because of that, you felt free too. It was as if his freedom gave you permission to rest. That moment taught me something. Freedom is contagious, and the eyes are one of its most powerful messengers. From a modern perspective, we might think of freedom as independence, or as the ability to do whatever we want. But the freedom in Buddhist wisdom goes deeper. It is freedom from being pushed around by our own emotions and cravings. It is the freedom of not being a slave to our fears. When that freedom lives in the heart, it shines through the eyes. And here's something beautiful to consider. Every step we take on the path of mindfulness, every act of letting go, every moment of compassion we cultivate, little by little, our eyes begin to change. They soften. They brighten. They lose that heaviness that comes from holding on too tightly. We don't have to wait until enlightenment to see it. Even now, we can practice looking at life with free eyes. Try this simple reflection. The next time you're in front of a mirror, pause and look into your own eyes. Ask yourself, what story are they telling today? Are they carrying anger? Are they restless with desire? Or do they hold a spark of gentleness, of ease? And then imagine, just for a moment, what your eyes would look like if you weren't afraid of losing anything, if you weren't desperate to hold onto anything. That image, those are the eyes of freedom. This is not about pretending. It's about practice. Practice letting go, practice softening, practice trusting that when you release your grip, life doesn't collapse, it opens. And your eyes, as the mirrors of the soul, will reflect that opening. Closing message. So yes, the eyes of freedom are the eyes of someone who has let go of fear, craving, and anger. They are the eyes of someone who sees the world clearly and kindly, without distortion. They remind us that true beauty doesn't come from shape or color, but from the spirit that shines through. And here's the good news. These eyes are not reserved only for the Buddha or the enlightened masters. They are possible for you, for me, for anyone who learns to let go and live with presence. In our next video, we'll explore how to bring this sense of freedom, not just into our gaze, but into every moment of our daily lives. Because freedom is not a distant destination. It can be lived here, now, in the very way we look at the world.